My daughter-in-law just told me I should be grateful for even being allowed at my daughter's wedding. My name is Cynthia Rhodes, and I'm supposedly dying of cancer. Here's what they don't know. I've been lying about the terminal diagnosis for 6 months. The cancer is fake. The 3-month prognosis is a test. And tonight, while they think they're humiliating a helpless dying woman, they're actually destroying a $3.2 million inheritance. Every cruel dismissal, every calculated insult, every moment they treated me like I was already dead because they thought I was powerless. I documented it all. They seated me at table 11 tonight, with the catering staff, fed me reheated leftovers, told me my medical condition was dampening their celebration. What they're about to discover will cost them everything. But here's what I didn't know when I started this test. The fake cancer I invented to expose my daughter's greed would lead to discovering real cancer, different type, actually terminal, and by the time I'm ready to reveal the truth, it might be too late to fix what I've broken. You know what's devastating about family betrayal? Sometimes when you test people, you find out things about yourself you didn't want to know. Sometimes the person who fails the test isn't who you expected, and sometimes cosmic justice has a sense of humor darker than anything you could plan. Hit subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Because what happens next isn't a triumph. It's a tragedy where everyone loses and nobody learns until it's too late. Let me show you how a wedding reception became the day I destroyed my family while discovering I'd actually been destroying them for 40 years. The humiliation started before I even entered Magnolia Event Center. "Mom, you're at table 11, Jessica said, not meeting my eyes. With the catering staff. Table 11 sat in the back corner, behind a decorative pillar and a wheeled dessert cart, the kind of spot you put people you're ashamed of. The kind of spot that says, "We had to invite you, but we don't want you seen." I looked at the seating chart. Jessica and Devin's table, Table 1 obviously, sat center stage under the crystal chandelier. His parents, the Thompsons, occupied Table 2. My table was literally numbered after the venue staff's break area. "The catering staff?" I asked quietly. "Well, you know." Jessica shifted uncomfortably, adjusting her $2,600 dress. "Devin thought it would be easier. Less walking for you because of the situation." The situation, that's what they called my supposed terminal ovarian cancer now, never Mom's illness or Cynthia's condition, just the situation, like an inconvenient weather delay. I watched Jessica fidget with her pearl necklace, a $400 piece that I later learned she'd put on credit. The same credit cards she'd been maxing out for months, planning this $21,800 wedding while her dying mother lived on a postal pension. "I understand," I said, and I genuinely did. For 6 months, I'd been watching, testing, learning who my daughter really was when she thought I had no power left. The results were exactly what I'd suspected, and more devastating than I wanted to admit. The fake medical records in my purse told everyone I had stage 4 ovarian cancer with 3 months to live. Dr. Patricia Davis, my late husband's best friend from church, had helped me create the perfect terminal diagnosis, the kind that makes people uncomfortable, the kind that makes them start dividing your belongings while you're still breathing. But what I didn't know, what I wouldn't discover until 2 weeks after this wedding, was that the fake diagnosis would lead to real tests, real scans, real cancer, just a different kind. Breast cancer, stage 2, caught early during the elaborate deception I'd constructed. The universe, it seemed, didn't appreciate being lied to about death. My 2002 Toyota Camry sat alone in the parking lot, surrounded by leased BMWs and financed luxury SUVs. 40 years of postal service doesn't buy you flash, but it taught me patience. It taught me to notice things, like how my daughter calculated timelines, like how her husband Devin looked at me and saw a problem with an expiration date. Inside my purse, next to the fake medical records, sat a Vanguard account statement. Balance $3,247,890.43. But here's what nobody knew. Not Jessica. Not Devin. Not even Dr. Patricia Davis, who'd helped me orchestrate this test. That money wasn't mine. Not really. Every penny of it came from my late husband Thomas. His life insurance, his disciplined investing, his 30 years of sacrifice while I worked overtime and climbed the Postal Service ladder. Thomas died 8 years ago. Heart attack at 54. The stress of raising our daughter alone while I chased promotions and worked night shifts probably killed him. But I'd spent those 8 years telling everyone about my financial discipline, my wise investments, my postal worker success story. All of it was a lie. I was living off my husband's ghost and taking credit for his sacrifice. Cynthia. Devin's voice cut through my thoughts. He approached in his rental tuxedo, all smiles for the photographer trailing behind him. You made it. We weren't sure you'd have the energy. Wouldn't miss it, I replied. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Listen, we're keeping things upbeat today for the photos, so maybe less talk about the medical stuff. People are trying to celebrate, you know? I nodded. Of course. And the flowers at your table are just extras from the ceremony. Don't read into it. Extra flowers for the dying woman. But I wasn't dying. Not yet anyway. I was testing. And with every cruel dismissal, every casual humiliation, my daughter and her husband were failing spectacularly. What I didn't know was that I was failing too. Failing to see that the cruelty I was documenting, I'd taught them. Every night I'd worked overtime instead of coming home. Every promotion I'd chosen over Jessica's recital. Every time I'd sent Thomas to parent-teacher conferences alone because I was too busy building my career. I'd taught my daughter that people were disposable. That money mattered more than presents. That family came second to ambition. And now I was punishing her for learning my lessons too well. The private investigator I'd hired, James Cooper, had been documenting everything for 6 months. Every conversation where they discussed my situation like a problem to be managed. Every time they calculated inheritance timelines. Every moment they showed who they really were when they thought I was powerless. But James had also been documenting something else. Something I'd asked him to investigate 3 months into my fake diagnosis. Background on Thomas's finances. How he'd built that $3.2 million. What he'd sacrificed while I climbed corporate ladders at the post office. The report sat in my car. I hadn't opened it yet. I wasn't sure I wanted to know how much Thomas had given up while I'd been absent. Margaret Wells, my estate attorney for 25 years, had 2 versions of my will in her office safe. The original left everything to Jessica. The new version, the one my daughter was earning through her choices tonight, told a very different story. But what Margaret didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that there would eventually be a 3rd version, written from a hospital bed, while actually dying, trying to undo damage that couldn't be undone. As I walked toward table 11, I passed tables of people I'd known for years, church members, neighbors, other postal workers from my years of service. Some smiled sympathetically. Others looked away, uncomfortable with the presence of death at a celebration. Nobody stopped to talk. Nobody asked how I was feeling. They'd all been told, I learned later, to keep things light, to not bring up my condition, to pretend the dying woman in the corner wasn't casting a shadow over the festivities. I sat between Maria, a 19-year-old server, and Carlos, the venue's assistant manager. Nice people, hard-working. They treated me with more genuine kindness in the first 5 minutes than my own daughter had shown in 6 months. You're the bride's mother? Maria asked, refilling my water glass with careful attention. I am. Beautiful wedding. You must be so proud. I smiled. It certainly cost enough. $21,800 to be exact. I'd seen the venue contract when Jessica left it on my kitchen table during one of her increasingly rare visits. The same visits where she'd glance at my pill bottles and ask careful questions about my estate planning. Jessica made $36,000 a year as an assistant manager at Morrison's Auto Sales. Devin pulled in $40,000 at his marketing firm. Together, they were spending more than half their combined annual income on one day. That was their choice. What bothered me wasn't the money. It was the calculation behind it. 6 months ago, when I'd first shared my diagnosis, Jessica's response wasn't grief, it was relief. I saw it in her eyes. That quick flash of someone doing inheritance math. Devin had been even more transparent. "Well," he'd said, "at least now we know our financial timeline for the wedding." Financial timeline. Like my death was a funding milestone on their project plan. I watched them now at table 1, laughing with Devin's parents. The Thompsons owned a small printing business and never missed a chance to remind everyone about their comfortable middle-class success. Around $280,000 in assets, according to the background check James had run. Comfortable, but hardly wealthy. Yet they'd raised a son who looked at a dying postal worker and saw only an obstacle to be managed until nature took its course. "Mom seems to be holding up well," I heard Devin tell his mother, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "All things considered, we're just grateful she made it to the wedding." Grateful. I made it to my own daughter's wedding. The irony was suffocating. If they'd shown even basic human decency, if they'd treated me like family instead of a dying inconvenience, I would have gladly helped with wedding costs, the down payment on a house, Jessica's dream of starting a family, all of it. Instead, they chose to see me as a problem with an expiration date. My phone buzzed. A text from James Cooper. "Documentation ready. Final recordings from today incoming. Confirm you want to proceed with reveal." I typed back, "Wait for my signal." The files James had compiled over 6 months were devastating. Audio recordings of conversations they thought I couldn't hear. Text messages between Jessica and Devin discussing my timeline. Screenshots of internet searches on my daughter's laptop. How long does stage 4 ovarian cancer take? Can terminal patients change their will? Contesting inheritance if parent remarries. But the most damaging evidence was their behavior tonight. I'd given them one final chance, one last opportunity to show basic human kindness to a woman they believed was dying. Instead, they'd seated me with the catering staff, given me leftover flowers, whispered about keeping my medical situation quiet because it was dampening the celebration. Every choice they made was being documented, every cruelty catalogued. What I didn't know yet was that I was being documented too. Dr. Patricia Davis, my supposed ally in this deception, had her own recording devices running, her own evidence collection, her own plan for how this story would end. Patricia had loved my husband Thomas. I'd known that for years, though we'd never discussed it. She'd been at his side in the hospital when he died, had held his hand when I was too busy at work to get there in time, had organized his funeral while I'd been checking work emails on my phone. She'd helped me create this fake diagnosis not because she wanted to help me test Jessica. She'd done it because she wanted to expose me, to show the world what kind of woman takes credit for her husband's sacrifices, what kind of mother abandons her child for 40 years and then punishes that child for learning to survive without her. Patricia's revenge was more patient than mine, and it would be more devastating. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ's voice boomed through the speakers. "Please welcome, for the first time as husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Devin Thompson." The room erupted in applause. Jessica and Devin entered, radiant, waving to their guests. They looked happy. They looked like they'd successfully navigated the inconvenience of a dying mother and made it to their celebration intact. They had no idea what was coming. Neither did I. The dinner service began. Prime rib and salmon for the main tables. Chicken breast, slightly dried out and clearly reheated, for table 11. Maria apologized as she set my plate down. "I'm sorry. This is what they designated for the staff tables." "It's fine," I said. And it was. I'd eaten worse during 40 years of night shifts and working lunches. What stung wasn't the food, it was the symbolism. Even my daughter's wedding menu had a hierarchy, and I'd been placed at the bottom of it. I took my phone out and snapped a photo of my plate. Another piece of evidence, another moment of casual cruelty to add to the file. What I didn't see was Carlos, the assistant manager, watching me document everything. He'd report it to Devin later. Your mother-in-law is taking pictures of everything. The seating chart, her table, the food. Something's not right. But by then, it would be too late to change course. For any of us. The speeches started after dinner. Devin's best man told stories about college parties and bachelor weekend adventures. Jessica's maid of honor cried through memories of their friendship since high school. Devin's father gave a toast about building a strong foundation for marriage, glancing meaningfully at his son. Nobody mentioned me. Nobody acknowledged the bride's mother. Not even a perfunctory thank you for being here, or we know this is difficult. I was a ghost at my own daughter's wedding, present but invisible, alive but already mourned and dismissed. I pulled out my phone again, opened my text conversation with James. Typed, "How much longer do you need? Reception should give us everything. The reveal can happen tonight or wait until tomorrow. Your call. Tonight or tomorrow." The difference between destroying my daughter's wedding reception and destroying her the morning after. Both options were cruel. Both would leave scars that might never heal. I thought about Thomas, about what he would say if he could see me now, setting traps for our daughter, documenting her worst moments, preparing to take everything away from her as punishment for being exactly what I'd taught her to be. He'd be ashamed of me. Just like he'd been ashamed for the last 20 years of our marriage, watching me choose work over family, ambition over presence, postal service promotions over our daughter's childhood. I'd killed Thomas with my absence as surely as any disease. And now I was killing my relationship with Jessica with the same cold calculation I'd once used to climb postal service ranks. The universe was paying attention. And in 2 weeks, when I went for the follow-up scans that Dr. Patricia insisted I needed to maintain the deception, I'd discover just how closely the universe had been watching. The father-daughter dance was announced. Jessica stood from table 1, looking around the room. For a moment, I thought she might acknowledge me, invite me to the floor despite everything. Give me one moment that said I still mattered. Instead, Devin's father stood up. Robert Thompson, in his perfectly tailored suit, extended his hand to my daughter. Since Jessica's father passed away, the DJ said, she's asked her father-in-law to share this special moment. The room applauded. I sat frozen at table 11, watching another man dance with my daughter, a man who'd known her for less than 2 years, a man who wasn't Thomas, a man who wasn't me. They swayed to My Girl by The Temptations, Thomas's favorite song. The one he used to sing to Jessica when she was little, before I started working night shifts and left him to handle bedtime alone. I pulled out my phone and recorded it. Another moment of erasure. Another piece of evidence. Another nail in the coffin of our relationship that I was building with my own hands. Carlos leaned over. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "Fine," I said. But I wasn't fine. I was watching my daughter choose a stranger over her own mother, and some part of me understood it was exactly what I deserved. After the dance, Jessica returned to her table. She hugged Robert Thompson, called him the father figure she'd always needed. The words carried across the room, clear and cutting. The father figure she'd always needed, because the mother she'd had was never there. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Rhodes, this is Patricia. I think we need to talk. Not here. Tomorrow. My office. 10 a.m. There's something about the test results you need to know." Test results? The fake diagnosis didn't have real test results. That was the point. It was all fabricated paperwork, carefully constructed lies designed to look authentic enough to fool my family. I texted back, What test results? The ones I ran anyway. Standard procedure for the diagnosis I supposedly gave you. I needed real scans to make the fake diagnosis believable if anyone checked. The imaging came back with findings. We need to discuss them immediately. My chest tightened. What kind of findings? Tomorrow, 10 a.m. This isn't a conversation for text message. I stared at my phone. Patricia had run real tests, real scans, to make the fake diagnosis more convincing. And she'd found something. The room suddenly felt too warm, too small. I needed air. I stood up, making my way toward the exit, past the tables of celebrating guests, past my daughter's table where she laughed with Devon's family, past the photo booth and the dessert table and all the expensive trappings of a wedding financed by inheritance they hadn't received yet. Outside, the October air was crisp, cool against my flushed face. I leaned against my Camry, trying to process what Patricia's message might mean. If she'd found something real, if there was actual cancer, not just the fake ovarian diagnosis, but something else, something true, what would that mean for my test? For my plan? For the reveal I'd been building toward? Mom? I turned. Jessica stood in the doorway, backlit by the reception hall lights. Her wedding dress glowed white in the darkness. "What are you doing out here?" she asked. "Just needed some air." She walked toward me, carefully navigating the gravel parking lot in her heels. Up close, I could see the makeup covering dark circles under her eyes. The tightness around her mouth that spoke of stress she wasn't sharing. "This must be hard for you," she said. "What must be hard?" "Being here, seeing all this, knowing you won't." She stopped herself, knowing the situation. The situation. Even now, standing alone with her dying mother in a parking lot, she couldn't say it, couldn't acknowledge that she thought I had 3 months to live. "Jessica," I said carefully, "if I asked you something, would you be honest with me?" She shifted uncomfortably. "What kind of question? Are you glad?" "About my diagnosis. About the timeline. Does it make things easier for you?" Her face closed off. "That's not fair. I'm not asking if you want me to die. I'm asking if part of you is relieved to know when it will happen, to be able to plan around it." "Mom, I can't have this conversation right now. It's my wedding day. When would be a good time? When I'm actually dead?" She flinched. "Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to ruin tonight?" "I'm not trying to ruin anything. I'm trying to understand what happened to us. When did I become someone you seat with the catering staff? Someone you give leftover flowers? Someone whose death you discuss like a financial planning opportunity? That's not fair. You don't understand the pressure we've been under, the wedding costs, the house we want to buy, Devon's student loans. Your diagnosis just complicated everything." "Complicated everything. That's what my cancer is to you. A complication." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "I meant that I'm 34 years old and I'm losing my mother and I don't know how to deal with that. I meant that Devon and I are drowning financially, and we hoped, that maybe when you're gone there would be something to help us. I meant that I'm exhausted and scared, and I don't have the emotional energy to grieve you properly while also trying to start my life." There it was. The honest truth I'd been testing for. She was scared and drowning, and seeing my death as a solution to problems I didn't know she had. "What problems?" I asked. "What are you drowning in?" She wiped her eyes, careful not to smudge her makeup. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." "Does it? Because for 34 years, Mom, you've been at work, at the post office, at training seminars, at union meetings, everywhere except home. Dad raised me. Dad was there for everything. And now you want to show up and ask me about my problems like you're suddenly interested in being my mother?" The words hit like physical blows. Because they were true. All of it was true. "Jessica, I was providing for our family, building security, making sure you had opportunities." "No, Mom, Dad was providing for our family. You were building your career. There's a difference. Your father and I both worked hard. Dad worked hard at his job and at being my parent. You just worked hard at your job. And now you're dying and I'm supposed to pretend like we had this close relationship we never had. Like I'm losing this amazing mother, when what I'm really losing is the idea of a mother I never actually got. I couldn't breathe. Everything I'd suspected, everything I'd feared about what my daughter really thought of me, she just confirmed. Not because she was cruel, but because she was honest. So the money, I said quietly. The inheritance you're expecting. That's all I am to you? I don't know what you are to me, Mom. I really don't. You've been a stranger who pays bills for as long as I can remember, and now you're a stranger who's dying and leaving money behind. Is that unfair? Maybe. But it's honest. She turned and walked back toward the reception hall, toward her new husband and his family and the life she was building that had no room for me in it. I stood in the parking lot, phone in my hand, and realized that my test had already revealed its answer. Jessica failed. But I'd failed first. 40 years ago, when I chose the post office over my daughter, when I left Thomas to raise her alone, when I built a career and called it providing when really it was just abandoning. The money I was planning to take away from her, it wasn't even mine. It was Thomas's. The man who'd actually sacrificed for our daughter. The man who'd been there when I wasn't. And I'd spent 8 years taking credit for his discipline while punishing my daughter for learning to survive without me. Patricia's text message sat on my screen. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Test results. Maybe the universe was about to teach me that some tests go both ways. I didn't go back inside. I sat in my Camry for the rest of the reception, watching people leave through the windshield. Happy couples, families with children, all of them part of a celebration I'd been excluded from. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. James Cooper. Cynthia, I have everything. 6 months of documentation, tonight's recordings, text messages between Jessica and Devin discussing your estate, searches on her laptop about inheritance law. It's all damning. When do you want me to deliver the package? I watched Jessica and Devin exit the venue, showered in rose petals and cheers. They looked happy, oblivious, about to start their lives together with plans financed by my supposed death. Don't, I said. What? Don't deliver it. Not yet. I need to think. Cynthia, this is what we've been working toward for 6 months. The evidence is conclusive. Your daughter and son-in-law have been treating your terminal diagnosis as a financial windfall. You wanted proof of their character. You have it. I know, but something happened tonight that changed things. What happened? I realized I might be testing the wrong person. I hung up before James could respond. Drove home to my small house in the quiet neighborhood where Thomas and I had raised Jessica, where he'd coached her soccer team and helped with homework and attended every school event while I worked late. Inside, the house felt empty. It had felt empty since Thomas died. Maybe it had felt empty long before that, during all those years when I was never home to fill it. I poured a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Thomas used to help Jessica with math problems, where they'd eat dinner together on nights I worked late, which was most nights. On the refrigerator hung a photo from Jessica's high school graduation. Thomas stood next to her, beaming with pride. I was in the photo too, but I'd arrived late, still in my postal supervisor uniform. My smile looked forced, distracted. Like I was already thinking about the Monday morning meeting I needed to prepare for. That was 16 years ago, and looking at it now, I could see the distance between Jessica and me even then. The way she leaned toward her father, the way her hand rested on his arm but didn't reach for mine. I'd spent 40 years building a career, climbing from mail carrier to supervisor to district manager, working overtime, volunteering for extra shifts, attending every training seminar, building what I thought was security for my family. But what I'd really built was an absence, a hole where a mother should have been, And Thomas had filled it, had been both parents, had loved Jessica enough for two people. And when he died at 54 from a heart attack brought on by stress and exhaustion, I'd taken the $3, $2 million he'd carefully saved and invested, and I'd told everyone it was my financial discipline that had built it. I'd stolen credit for my dead husband's sacrifice, and then I'd used that stolen money to test my daughter for being exactly what I'd taught her to be: cold, calculating, absent when it mattered. My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret Wells, my attorney. "Cynthia, I have both versions of your will ready. Original leaves everything to Jessica. Revised version leaves everything to American Cancer Society. Which one would you like me to file as official? I need your decision by Monday." Monday. 3 days away. 3 days to decide if I wanted to punish my daughter for failing a test I'd designed while failing one much bigger myself. I thought about Patricia's message, the test results she wanted to discuss tomorrow at 10 a.m. Part of me was terrified of what she'd found. But another part of me, the part that had spent 6 months lying about dying, felt like maybe I deserved whatever cosmic joke the universe was about to deliver. I texted Margaret back, "Let me think about it. I'll let you know Monday." Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I opened my laptop and went through my photo albums. Not the physical ones in the living room that Thomas had carefully maintained. The digital ones, my photos. The ones I'd taken during my 40 years of postal service. Awards ceremonies, promotion celebrations, team-building events, retirement parties for colleagues. Hundreds of photos of my professional life, my accomplishments, my career. And in all those hundreds of photos, there were maybe 10 that included Jessica. Her 5th birthday party, where I'd arrived 2 hours late because of a scheduling conflict. Her middle school graduation, where I'd left early for a district meeting. Her Sweet 16, where I'd checked my work phone every 5 minutes. In every single photo where Jessica appeared, she looked uncomfortable, like she was intruding on my real life, like she knew she was an obligation I was fulfilling rather than a daughter I was celebrating. No wonder she saw my death as a financial opportunity. I'd taught her that everything in life was a transaction, that love was measured in money and provision rather than presence. That showing up meant collecting a paycheck, not being there when it mattered. I closed the laptop and went to my bedroom, pulled out the box I kept in my closet, the one with Thomas's things. His watch, his wedding ring, his journal. I'd never read his journal. It felt like an invasion of privacy. But tonight, sitting alone in a house that had been lonely for decades, I opened it. The entries started 20 years ago, January 15th, 2005. Cynthia got another promotion today. District supervisor. She's so proud. I'm proud too. But Jessica asked me tonight why Mommy never comes to her basketball games. I didn't know what to tell her. I said Mommy's working hard so we can have nice things. Jessica said she'd rather have Mommy at her games than nice things. I didn't tell Cynthia. She already feels guilty enough. March 8th, 2005. Jessica's science fair project won first place. I took her out for ice cream to celebrate. She asked if we could wait to eat it until Mommy got home so we could celebrate as a family. We waited until 9 p.m. Cynthia didn't get home until 10:30. The ice cream melted. Jessica cried. Not about the ice cream, I think. About something bigger. June 22 ans, 2008. Jessica graduates middle school tomorrow. Cynthia promised she'd be there, but she just called. Emergency meeting in the district office. Can't miss it. Jessica overheard me on the phone. She said, "It's okay, Daddy." I knew she wouldn't come. She's 13 years old and she already knows her mother won't show up. What have we done to her? October 3rd, 2012. Cynthia missed Jessica's 18th birthday dinner tonight. Work emergency. Always a work emergency. Jessica didn't even seem disappointed. That's worse somehow. She's stopped expecting her mother to show up. She's stopped hoping. I'm failing both of them. I should have put my foot down years ago, should have made Cynthia choose. But I was afraid. Afraid of the fight. Afraid she'd choose work. Afraid Jessica would lose her mother completely instead of just mostly. April 15th, 2017. 1 month before Thomas died. I had chest pains today. Didn't tell Cynthia. She's dealing with budget cuts at work. Stressed enough already. I made a doctor's appointment for next week. Jessica called tonight. She wants to start trying for a baby soon. Wants to know if we'd help with childcare. I said yes immediately. Cynthia would probably say no. Too busy. Always too busy. I hope I live long enough to meet my grandchild. To give that baby what I couldn't give Jessica. A grandmother who shows up. I closed the journal. My hands were shaking. Thomas had known. Had documented it all. Had watched me choose work over family for 20 years and had stayed silent. Had protected me. Had filled the gaps I'd created. And then he'd died. And I'd taken his money and his sacrifice and his legacy and claimed it as my own. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., I'd find out what Patricia's real tests had discovered. But I already knew the most important diagnosis. I was sick long before any cancer. I'd been sick for 40 years. And I'd infected my daughter with the same disease. The question was whether either of us could be cured. I arrived at Dr. Patricia Davis's office at 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. A lifetime habit from 40 years of postal service, where being late meant mail didn't get delivered. Patricia's receptionist, a woman I'd known from church for years, wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dr. Davis will see you shortly. Please have a seat." I sat in the waiting room, surrounded by pamphlets about cancer treatment, support groups, end-of-life planning. All the things I'd pretended to need for the past 6 months. All the resources I'd exploited to make my fake diagnosis convincing. At exactly 10 a.m., Patricia opened her office door. "Cynthia, come in." Her office was neat, professional, degrees on the wall, photos of her family, a picture of her and Thomas from a church picnic 15 years ago, both of them laughing at something I wasn't there to witness because I'd been working that Sunday. "Thank you for coming," Patricia said, sitting behind her desk. Her hands were folded, her expression neutral. "Professional. I need to discuss the imaging we did." "The imaging for the fake diagnosis." "Yes. I told you I needed to run actual tests to make the deception convincing. Standard protocols. CT scans, blood work, everything that would show up if Jessica or Devin decided to verify your diagnosis with another doctor. And you found something." "Yes." Patricia pulled out a manila folder, opened it. Inside were real medical reports, real scan images, real results. The CT scan we did to fake your ovarian cancer showed no ovarian abnormalities, but it did show something else. My chest tightened. "What?" "A mass in your left breast. We followed up with a mammogram and biopsy. The results came back Friday." Friday, the day before Jessica's wedding. While I'd been preparing to document my daughter's cruelty, Patricia had been waiting to tell me I actually had cancer. "What kind of mass?" "Invasive ductal carcinoma. Stage 2. It's treatable, Cynthia. Caught relatively early. With surgery and treatment, your prognosis is good, but you need to start immediately." I stared at the reports. At the scan images showing the tumor that had been growing while I'd been pretending to die. How long have I had it? Impossible to say exactly. Months, maybe longer. You haven't had a mammogram in 3 years, according to your records. 3 years, because I'd been too busy, too focused on work, too convinced I was invincible. Just like I'd been too busy to be a mother, too focused on my career to notice my husband's stress, too convinced my priorities were justified. What's the treatment plan? Lumpectomy, radiation, possibly chemotherapy, depending on lymph node involvement. We're looking at 6 to 8 months of treatment. But Cynthia, you need to understand something. Patricia leaned forward. The stress you've been under for the past 6 months, the deception, the emotional manipulation of your family. That doesn't help. Cancer thrives on stress. Your body has been in fight or flight mode for half a year while you've been playing games with your daughter's emotions. Is that a medical opinion or a personal judgment? Both. Patricia's professional mask slipped. I loved Thomas. You know that. Everyone knew that. And I watched him work himself to death trying to be both parents because you were never there. I watched him raise Jessica alone. I watched him die of a heart attack at 54 because the stress of doing everything himself destroyed his heart. Patricia, I'm not finished. When you came to me 6 months ago asking for help creating a fake diagnosis, do you know why I said yes? Because we're friends. Because I asked. Because I wanted to see if Jessica would treat you the way you treated Thomas, with casual dismissal, with absence when it mattered, with prioritizing everything else over you, and she did. She learned from the master. The words hit like a slap, so this was your test too. Yes, and you both failed. Jessica failed by seeing your death as a financial opportunity, and you failed by not recognizing that you taught her to think that way. By spending 6 months punishing her for being exactly what you raised her to be. And now? What happens now? Patricia closed the folder. Now you have real cancer. You need real treatment. And you need to decide if you're going to tell your daughter the truth. About the fake diagnosis. About the real one. About the money that's actually Thomas's. Not yours. About all of it. What if I don't? Then you'll die with your lies intact, and Jessica will inherit $3.2 million from a mother she never really knew, built on the sacrifice of a father she barely remembers. Is that the legacy you want? I thought about Thomas's journal, about the entries documenting every absence, every missed moment, every time I'd chosen work over family, and convinced myself it was for their benefit. There's something else you need to know, Patricia said. Jessica came to see me 2 months ago. My blood went cold. What? She asked me about your diagnosis, wanted to verify it was real. She brought your medical records, asked specific questions about treatment options, prognosis, timelines. What did you tell her? I confirmed the diagnosis I'd fabricated. But Cynthia, your daughter isn't stupid. She knows something is off. She's been watching you, noticing things, like how you never have treatment side effects, how you never miss work, how you seem healthier than someone with 3 months to live should be. She knows it's fake? I don't know if she knows for certain, but she suspects, and she's been playing along, just like you've been playing along, both of you testing each other, both of you failing. I sat in silence, processing this information. Jessica knew or suspected, which meant her cruelty at the wedding wasn't just heartlessness toward a dying mother. It was calculated response to a mother she knew was lying. We'd been testing each other, both of us. And both of us were losing. What do I do now? I asked. Patricia stood up, walked to her window, looked out at the parking lot where my Camry sat next to luxury cars and SUVs. You do what Thomas would have done. You tell the truth. You get treatment. And you give Jessica a chance to decide if she wants a real relationship with a flawed, honest mother or no relationship with a perfect, dishonest one. And if she chooses no relationship, then at least you'll know. And you can die with a clear conscience instead of a carefully constructed lie. I sat in my car for an hour after leaving Patricia's office. Real cancer. Stage 2. Treatable, but serious. The universe had taken my lie and made it partially true. My phone rang. Jessica. I almost didn't answer. But something about Patricia's words, about Thomas's journal, about the weight of 40 years of absence, made me pick up. Mom, we need to talk. About what? About yesterday. About what I said in the parking lot. I was cruel. I know that. Can we meet for coffee? When? Today. This afternoon. There's something I need to tell you. We agreed on 2 p.m. at the coffee shop near her apartment. I spent the intervening hours driving aimlessly, trying to figure out what to say, how to explain 6 months of deception, how to reveal real cancer after faking terminal illness, how to tell your daughter you've been testing her character while failing every test yourself. Jessica was already there when I arrived. She looked tired. Her wedding glow had faded to something more strained. She'd changed from her honeymoon clothes, jeans and a sweater, into something that looked like she hadn't slept. "Thanks for coming," she said. I sat across from her. "What did you want to tell me?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung between us. Pregnant. My daughter was pregnant. I was going to be a grandmother. How far along? 5 months. I've been hiding it. The dress was specially made to conceal it. Nobody at the wedding knew except Devon. 5 months. She'd been pregnant through 3 months of my fake diagnosis. Pregnant while I'd been testing her. Pregnant while planning a wedding they couldn't afford. "Why didn't you tell me?" Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd judge me for getting pregnant before the wedding. Afraid you'd make it about money. Afraid you'd—" She stopped. "Afraid you'd find a way to not be there for this either." "Jessica, I would have been there." "Would you?" "Because, Mom, you've never been there. Not for my childhood. Not for Dad's death. Not for anything that mattered. Why would this be different?" "Because it's your child. My grandchild." "Exactly. And I don't want my baby to have the same grandmother I had. Someone who sends checks but doesn't show up. Someone who works through every holiday. Someone who treats family like items on a to-do list." The words were surgical in their precision, cutting through every excuse I'd built for 40 years. "Is that why you've been so cold? About my diagnosis? Because you don't believe I'll change even if I survive?" Jessica looked at me steadily. "Mom, I know about the diagnosis." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know it's fake. I've known for 2 months. I hired my own investigator. I know you created fake medical records with Dr. Davis. I know you've been testing me, documenting my behavior, building a case to change your will." The coffee shop seemed to tilt. "You knew?" "Yes, and I played along. Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. How cruel you'd be. If you'd actually ruin my wedding with your fake dying act, and you didn't disappoint." "Jessica, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you'd lie about terminal cancer? Why you'd put me through 6 months of grieving a mother who wasn't dying? Why you'd test me instead of just talking to me? I wanted to know who you really were, when you thought I was powerless. And I wanted to know who you really were, when you thought you had all the power. We were both testing each other, Mom, and we both discovered exactly what we suspected. You're manipulative and absent. I'm cold and calculating. Congratulations. We're both terrible." I sat in silence. She'd known. For 2 months. She'd known. Which meant her cruelty at the wedding was deliberate. Performance art. Her own test. "What was your plan?" I asked. "To let you reveal your fake cancer at some dramatic moment, to watch you try to punish me, and then to reveal that I knew all along, that your big test was pointless because I was testing you right back. And now? Now I don't know. Because, Mom, here's what you don't know. The money problems Devon and I have, they're not credit cards and wedding debt. I have $48,000 in medical bills from fertility treatments, 3 rounds of IVF that failed. This pregnancy is natural, a miracle, and I've been terrified the entire time that I'd lose it. Why didn't you tell me? Because you've never been someone I could tell things to. You've been a checkbook, a source of money and judgment. Not a mother. Jessica, I'm sorry. For all of it. For 40 years of absence. For the fake diagnosis. For testing you instead of loving you. You're right about everything. Are you actually sorry? Or are you sorry you got caught? I'm sorry I became someone who thought testing was the same as loving. Someone who thought providing money was the same as being present. Jessica wiped her eyes. There's something else. I was going to contest your will. After you died. I had lawyers ready. I was going to fight whatever changes you made, take back what I thought was mine. And now? Now I don't know what's mine, or what's right, or if we can fix 40 years of damage in however much time we have left. I reached across the table, took her hand. She didn't pull away. Jessica, there's something I need to tell you. The fake cancer led to real tests. They found something. Breast cancer, stage 2. I actually need treatment. Her face went white. You're lying again. I'm not. I have the reports in my car. Patricia found it during the scans for the fake diagnosis. The universe has a dark sense of humor. So you faked dying and now you're actually sick? Yes. Jessica started laughing, then crying, then both. That's the most messed up irony I've ever heard. I know. Are you going to be okay? With treatment, yes, it's treatable. But Jessica, I need you to know something. The money you think you're inheriting? It's not mine, it's your father's. Every penny. I've been taking credit for his sacrifice for 8 years. Jessica stared at me. What do you mean it's Dad's money? I mean your father saved and invested every penny for 30 years. The $3.2 million came from his life insurance and his careful planning. I was too busy working to even know what he was doing. And after he died, I took credit for it. Told everyone it was my postal service discipline, my wise investing. It was all a lie. You've been living off Dad's money and pretending it was yours? Yes. Jessica pulled her hand away. So everything you've done for the past 8 years, every time you've acted like you built this security through your own hard work, that was all stolen credit? Yes. And you were planning to take Dad's money and give it away to punish me for being ungrateful for money that wasn't even yours to give? The logic was devastating when she said it out loud. I was wrong. About all of it. You're not wrong, Mom. You're broken. There's a difference. Jessica stood up. I need to go. I need to process all of this. Please, let me explain. Explain what? That you faked cancer to test me? That the money is actually Dad's? That you're now really sick after lying about being sick? That we've been testing each other for months like some kind of psychological warfare? Which part needs more explaining? I want to fix this. Before the baby comes, I want to be a real grandmother. You can't even be a real mother. What makes you think you can be a grandmother? She walked out, left me sitting alone with cold coffee and the wreckage of 40 years of choices I couldn't undo. I drove home in a fog. Inside, the house felt smaller, suffocating. I opened Thomas's journal again, read more entries I'd avoided before. May 2nd, 2015. Cynthia got another promotion today. Regional manager, the highest a Black woman has ever gotten in this district. I'm proud of her. Really, I am. But Jessica called tonight. Her car broke down. She needed help. I was at work. Couldn't leave. She called Cynthia. Voicemail. 3 times. Finally called a tow truck and paid $300 she didn't have. When I got home, I called Cynthia. Asked why she didn't answer Jessica's calls. She said she was in a meeting. Couldn't be interrupted. A meeting was more important than our daughter stranded on the highway. I don't know how to keep doing this. November 18th, 2016. Jessica asked me today if we could come to her apartment for Thanksgiving. Small, intimate, just the 3 of us. I said yes immediately. Then Cynthia came home and said she'd already committed to working the holiday. Double pay. Someone needs to cover the district office. Jessica heard me tell Cynthia it was fine. Saw me choose not to fight. I think that hurt worse than Cynthia missing Thanksgiving. Jessica knows I could stand up to Cynthia, but I don't. I'm failing her by enabling this. December 20th, 2016. Heart palpitations again today. Worse this time. I have an appointment next week. Haven't told anyone, especially not Cynthia. She's stressed about year-end evaluations. I'll wait until after the holidays. It's probably nothing anyway. January 8th, 2017. Doctor says my blood pressure is dangerously high, stress-related. He asked about my home life. I didn't know what to say. That my wife is never home? That I've raised our daughter alone for 25 years? That I'm exhausted from being two parents? That I resent her success because it came at the cost of our family? I didn't say any of that. I said everything's fine. He prescribed medication. I'll start taking it tomorrow. May 1st, 2017. 2 weeks before Thomas died. Cynthia asked me today if I was happy. Out of nowhere. Just looked at me over breakfast and asked. I said yes. She looked relieved, went to work. I sat at the table for an hour after she left, wondering why I lied. I'm not happy, haven't been for years, but what's the point of saying it now? We've built a life around her career. Jessica's grown. The money's been saved. What would change if I told the truth? Nothing, except everyone would be uncomfortable. So I lie. Say I'm happy. Take my blood pressure medication. And hope I live long enough to meet my grandchildren. The entry ended there. 2 weeks later, Thomas died. Heart attack at work. He'd been picking up lunch for a church potluck. Collapsed in the parking lot. By the time I got to the hospital, he was gone. I'd been in a budget meeting. Hadn't answered my phone. Patricia had been with him. Had held his hand. Had heard his last words, which she'd never shared with me. I called her now. Patricia, what did Thomas say? When he was dying, what were his last words? Silence on the line. Then, are you sure you want to know? Yes. He said, tell Cynthia it wasn't worth it. The promotions, the money, the respect. None of it was worth losing her family. Then he said, tell Jessica I'm sorry I didn't fight harder. Sorry I let her mother miss everything. And then he was gone. I couldn't breathe. Thomas had died knowing it was all wasted. Knowing I'd sacrificed our family for a career that didn't love me back. Knowing Jessica had grown up without a mother because I'd chosen the post office over her. Why didn't you tell me? Because you weren't ready to hear it. And because I was angry. I loved him, Cynthia. And I watched you waste him. Watched you take his sacrifice for granted. Watched you build a career on his unpaid labor as a father and husband. When you asked me to help fake your diagnosis, part of me wanted you to experience what Thomas experienced. Being invisible, being dismissed, being treated like you don't matter. So this was revenge. This was karma. You spent 40 years making Thomas and Jessica feel invisible. 6 months of fake cancer barely begins to even the score. She hung up. I sat with Thomas's journal, with the weight of his words, with the knowledge that he'd died resenting me. That his last thoughts were about wasted time and missed opportunities and a wife who'd chosen everything except him. The cancer growing in my breast felt like cosmic justice, like the universe saying, you spent 40 years killing your family with absence, now let's see how you face actual mortality. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. I talked to Devin. We're not contesting the will. Whatever you decide to do with Dad's money is between you and his memory. But I need space. From you. From this, maybe forever. Maybe forever. I'd tested my daughter's character and discovered my own was worse. I'd faked dying and found real death waiting. I'd taken credit for my husband's sacrifice and lost the respect of everyone who mattered. I was 62 years old. I had real cancer. And I'd destroyed my family trying to prove they didn't deserve money that was never mine to withhold. I started treatment the following week. Lumpectomy scheduled for Monday, radiation to follow, possibly chemotherapy depending on what they found during surgery. Margaret Wells called me Friday. Cynthia, I need a decision about the will. Which version are you filing? Neither. What do you mean, neither? I mean I'm writing a third version. One that tells the truth, that the money is Thomas's, not mine, that Jessica should inherit it because it was meant for her all along, and that I spent 8 years lying about where it came from. That's not legally necessary. You're the surviving spouse. The money is legally yours to distribute. But it's not morally mine. It was never mine. I'm putting it right. Cynthia, are you sure? Once you file this, there's no changing it. And if Jessica knows the truth about your deception, she might use it against you. Let her. I deserve it. The surgery was routine. They removed the tumor and 4 lymph nodes. 2 came back positive for cancer, which meant chemotherapy. 6 months of treatment, hair loss, nausea, weakness. All the things I'd pretended to have during my fake diagnosis, I'd now experience for real. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jessica didn't visit me in the hospital. Didn't call. Didn't text. Devin sent flowers with a card that said, "Wishing you strength." Nothing from my daughter. Patricia came by on day 2, sat in the visitor's chair. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm being punished." "Maybe you are. Or maybe you're just experiencing consequences. There's a difference. I lost her. I lost Jessica. You lost her 40 years ago. You're just noticing now. Can I fix it?" Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Some things can't be fixed. They can only be grieved." James Cooper came by on day 3. Brought me the files he'd compiled, 6 months of documentation, all the evidence of Jessica and Devin's cruelty, their calculations, their cold discussions about my death timeline. "What do you want me to do with this?" he asked. "Destroy it, all of it." "Cynthia, this is 6 months of work. Evidence of their character, proof that I raised a daughter who learned to be exactly like me. Destroy it, James, please." He took the files. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing." The right thing would have been not doing any of this in the first place. I went home after 5 days. The house felt emptier than ever. I set up the spare bedroom for recovery, filled prescriptions, scheduled radiation appointments, prepared for 6 months of treatment that would coincide with my daughter's pregnancy. She was due in March. I'd be finishing chemotherapy around the same time. We'd both be bringing something new into the world. Her, a baby. Me, whatever version of myself survived this. 2 months passed. October became November. November became December. I went to radiation 5 days a week. Started chemotherapy in late November. Lost my hair by mid-December. Church members brought meals, sent cards, prayed for me, but they looked at me differently now. Word had spread about the fake diagnosis, about the test I'd put Jessica through, about Patricia's revelation that the money was Thomas's, not mine. I'd become a cautionary tale, a sermon illustration about pride and deception. The woman who faked dying and discovered she was actually sick. The mother who tested her daughter and failed the test herself. On Christmas Eve, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was an ultrasound photo. A note in Jessica's handwriting. "It's a girl, due March 15th. We're naming her Sarah, after Dad's mother. Thought you should know. Sarah, my mother-in-law, Thomas's mother. The woman who'd been more of a grandmother to Jessica than I'd been a mother. The woman who'd died 10 years ago, having watched me choose career over family her entire life. They were naming the baby after Thomas's family. Not mine, because my family legacy was absence and lies and tests disguised as love. I put the ultrasound on my refrigerator, next to the photo of Jessica's high school graduation, next to the picture of Thomas. Next to all the moments I'd missed while building a career I couldn't even remember the point of anymore. March 15th, 3 months away. I'd finish treatment around then. Be in remission, if I was lucky. Be alive to meet my granddaughter. If Jessica let me. I called her that night. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail. "Jessica, it's Mom. Thank you for the ultrasound. Sarah is a beautiful name. Your grandmother would be honored. I know I don't have the right to ask, but when she's born, if you'd let me meet her, I'd like to try to be the grandmother I never was as a mother. I understand if the answer is no. I understand if you never want to see me again. But I wanted you to know that I'm here. And I'm sorry. For all of it. For 40 years of absence. I'm so sorry. She didn't call back. March 15th arrived. The day Jessica was due. The day I finished my last chemotherapy treatment. The day Thomas had died 8 years ago. I sat in the hospital receiving my final infusion, wondering if my daughter was in labor somewhere in this same building, wondering if she'd had the baby already, wondering if I'd ever know. My phone rang at 2 p.m. Devon. Mrs. Rhodes. Jessica had the baby this morning. Sarah Thomas Thompson. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Both are healthy. Thank you for telling me. Silence on the line. Then, Jessica wanted you to know, but she's not ready to see you yet. She's still processing everything. The fake diagnosis, the real cancer. The money being Thomas's, the 40 years of absence. It's a lot. I understand. She asked me to tell you something, though, she said. Tell Mom that Sarah has her grandfather's eyes. And that maybe someday, when Sarah asks about her grandmother, there will be something true to tell her. Maybe someday. Not now. Not soon. Maybe someday. It was more than I deserved. One morning in late September, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jessica standing on my porch, Sarah in a carrier on her chest. Hi, Mom. Jessica. I couldn't breathe. Come in. Please. She stepped inside, looked around the house she'd grown up in. It looks the same. I haven't changed much. Can we sit? We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Thomas had helped Jessica with homework, where they'd eaten dinner together while I worked late, where all the moments I'd missed had happened without me. I've been in therapy, Jessica said. Working through a lot. The fake diagnosis. My own cruelty. Dad's death. 40 years of having an absent mother. Jessica, I'm so sorry. Let me finish. I've been working through it, and my therapist asked me something. She said, "What do you want Sarah to learn about family? About forgiveness? About second chances?" What did you say? I said I want her to learn that people can be flawed and still worthy of love. That mistakes don't define you forever. That family is complicated but worth fighting for. She adjusted Sarah in the carrier. Mom, you were a terrible mother. You were absent. You were manipulative. You faked cancer to test me. You took credit for Dad's sacrifice. You're probably the most flawed person I know. I nodded. All of it was true. But you're also the only mother I have, and Sarah deserves to know her grandmother, not the perfect version you pretended to be, the real one, flawed, recovering, trying. I don't know how to be a grandmother. You didn't know how to be a mother either, but here we are. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I'm not saying everything's fixed. I'm not saying I've forgiven 40 years of absence. I'm saying I'm willing to try. For Sarah. And maybe for us. I'd like that. There are conditions. You show up. Really show up. Not with money. With time. With presence. You don't get to put work first. You don't get to test me. You don't get to fake anything ever again. Just real. Just honest. Just here. I can do that. Jessica unbuckled Sarah from the carrier. Then meet your granddaughter. She placed Sarah in my arms. 6 months old. Thomas's eyes. Jessica's nose. A whole person I had no right to know, but was being given a chance to love anyway. Hi, Sarah, I whispered. I'm your Grandma Cynthia. I have a lot to tell you about your Grandpa Thomas. He was better than me in every way. And I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying to be worthy of his legacy. Sarah grabbed my finger, held on tight. Jessica was crying. I was crying. And for the first time in 40 years, I was present for a moment that mattered. I tested my daughter. Cancer tested me. We both survived. That's not a triumph. That's just mercy. That is Cynthia's story. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our global community come together over these powerful stories about family, deception, and the cost of testing the people you love. Real question. If you were Cynthia, what would you have done? Would you have faked terminal cancer to test your daughter? Would you have confronted Jessica directly about her coldness? Or would you have just accepted that 40 years of absence created the distance between you? Tell me in the comments. Hit that like button if this story made you feel something. Share it if you know someone who's ever been tested by family, someone who had to choose between honesty and manipulation, someone who learned too late that presence matters more than money. And subscribe for more raw, real stories about absent parents, the cost of career ambition, testing family versus trusting them, and what happens when cosmic justice delivers the exact lesson you need in the cruelest way possible. See you in the next video.